Hello, writers, and welcome to the Author Burnout Coach. Together, we will dismantle the burnout culture in book publishing and reclaim our love of stories. I am your host, Isabel Sterling, and this is episode 11. Hey, writer friends! I am so excited for today's podcast episode, which was inspired by last week's interview with Erica Davis. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, which is number 10, Learning to Love Revision, I highly recommend you check that out. Erica is a delightful human, so it is worth a listen. During that episode, Erica mentioned the acronym thing I do as a coach, so I want to talk about that today. It's officially called the Self-Coaching Model, and it was developed by Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School, which is where I got my certification. It is an incredible self-awareness tool, and it's so powerful in identifying the unique cause of your personal burnout struggles. As I mentioned in the Writer's Block episode, when you know the cause of the problem, you can actually develop a really tailored solution, one that tackles the source of the problem instead of putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms. So hopefully I've got you good and excited to learn about the model, so we're going to get right into it. The model, as taught by Brooke, posits that everything in life can be boiled down to 5 main categories, and those are circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. And we shorten that to CTFAR. So I'll break down these 5 main categories for you and put them in a publishing context. Circumstances are things that happen out in the world that are external to us. And for the purposes of the model, we try to break them down to the most basic facts without any of our own personal commentary. Every circumstance in the model should be just the facts, neutral, things that everybody would agree on. Thoughts, kind of conversely, are really full of opinion. So these are the sentences that run through our head, and that can include beliefs and subjective observations and judgments and any stories we have about our circumstances. And really, even if you only focus on these 2 pieces of the model, you can get a lot of progress just learning how to separate out what is a circumstance or a fact in the world and what is your thought about it. As humans, we tend to attribute our emotional state, how we feel, to our circumstances, such as our job, our sales number, whether or not we have an agent. We believe those cause our feelings, but they don't. Thoughts cause feelings, not circumstances. Being able to tell the difference between what is a thought and what is a circumstance is really powerful. This isn't as easy as it sounds, though. It's actually quite tricky, and it's why having a coach is so valuable. Oftentimes, as humans, we will state our thoughts as if they are facts. So we think that it's just a fact of the world. We don't realize that it's our particular point of view that we've either consciously or subconsciously chosen. For example, we tend to believe that it's hard to get self-published books into bookstores. That isn't a circumstance, though. It's actually a thought. And one of the tricks to knowing that it's a thought is that there's a descriptor in there. We think that it's hard to do. That is actually subjective. That is not the specific fact. So the fact or the circumstance might actually be that this specific store has a policy that states that they do not sell self-published books. If a store has a policy that says that, that is the fact. So that was what we would put on our circumstance line in the model. And then your thought about the fact is something like, okay, it's hard to get self-published books into bookstores. Do you see the difference that we have there? The circumstance, it's neutral. It's just this store has a policy that says this. We can all look at the policy, say, yep, that's the policy that they have. And then the thought is our interpretation of what that policy means for us. In this example, the thought is it's hard to get self-published books into bookstores. Someone else could think it's impossible rather than hard. Somebody might think it's a good policy. Someone else might think it's a terrible elitist policy. Those are all thoughts. And what thought you have about that circumstance, about that policy, is going to affect how you feel about the policy. The policy itself doesn't have any impact on your feelings. It's how you interpret it. Now, this might seem like a small nuance, but it matters so much for the rest of the model and for how we experience the world. Because the thoughts we think, both the ones we choose on purpose and the ones that happen more automatically before we're super aware that they're happening, those thoughts, whether we're aware or not, those affect the next line of the model, which is your feeling. You probably know this, but I'm going to explain it anyways, just in case. Feelings are, in this context, a one-word emotion that causes a vibration in your body. So this is things like sad, angry, frustrated, hopeful, grounded, ashamed, joy, anticipation, grief. These are all feelings. Now, despite the patriarchy's insistence that emotions are frivolous and silly, they're actually hugely important because every single thing we do in life is either in pursuit of a specific feeling or a way to try to avoid feeling that emotion. So we want to get published because we think we'll feel proud and excited and accomplished and important or worthy. And then we avoid working on our novels because we don't want to feel frustrated or doubt or shame or confused. This is true about literally everything. We are either chasing a feeling or avoiding a feeling. Continuing down the model, feelings then lead to our actions, and this we call the A line. So actions include both the things we do and the things that we're avoiding doing. So for example, if you are feeling frustrated because you're thinking, I will never figure out the story, you might avoid working on your book and instead organize your junk drawers or scroll social media. All of those things would go on your action line in the model. And the reason it's important to put all of those different actions on the model because it helps us create a picture of what our end result is. And the result is the way that you experience your life. And because it's your experience, you can only put you in the result line or the R line. You can't put other people. Let's look at a publishing example to see how the pieces of the model all work together. So let's say our circumstance is that we've received a query rejection. We could even get really specific, is that we received an email from agent named blah, blah, blah that said, and whatever the specific line is. You can get really specific in your C lines if you want, or you can simply say, I received a rejection. That is a circumstance. That is what happened. Now, your thought about it might be, this publishing thing is never going to happen for me. For some people, that thought might create anger. For some, defeated. In this example, we're going defeated. And when you feel defeated, maybe you check your query spreadsheet. You wallow in negative feelings, you avoid your current manuscript, you consider maybe pulling this book from the query trenches and revising it in case it's terrible. And then maybe you're like, maybe I'm just going to quit altogether, and you just give up on your publishing dreams. When you go down this road, you make it less likely that you're going to succeed. And if you really sort of stay in this model and you do quit, you ensure that this never happens for you, which is what your thought was initially. Now, of course, we have like a bajillion thoughts a day. So we have a bajillion models running sort of all at the same time. So just because you think this is never going to happen and you feel defeated, so long as you don't stay there. So if you move to a new model and you think something different, that's not going to play all the way out and you're not going to end up getting that result. Some folks will go from defeated and then they might get this sort of sense of, I'm going to show them, I'm going to, prove the haters wrong. And then they feel sort of invigorated and then they follow that all the way through and that keeps them going. The trick here is that most folks will assume that it's the rejection that's causing the feelings of defeated, but it's not. It's the thought about the rejection that causes the feeling. Because we could have the exact same rejection and have a different model. So the model could be, the circumstance is you received the query rejection. The thought is then, this is part of the process. And you feel secure because you're doing the process. And when you feel secure, instead of the previous actions, now you mark the rejection in your tracker and you get back to work. You get back to writing your new project, you focus on your day job or whatever you were doing before the rejection email came in. And you can just trust that you're doing the process. And when you believe that and you do those actions, you continue the process of achieving your dream. So when you change the thought, you change your experience of your life. Now, I have to give you a caveat because I'm sure there are some of you who are like, Isabel, I don't know about this. I'm going to go with you there for a second because here's the thing. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before on this podcast, but if I haven't, we're going to go over it again. We don't go from one thought extreme to the other. We're not going to go from I'm a terrible writer to I'm a brilliant writer and expect that to magically give us a brilliant book. That's not how it works. And part of that is that we have to believe the thought for the rest of the model to play out. Because if we don't believe a thought, we don't actually feel an emotion from thinking it. And this is so, so, so key to all of this. And this is the nuance that we need to be able to use this tool to wiggle out of burnout. Because we're not going from I'm doomed to I'm going to get an agent tomorrow. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to take one little step at a time. Maybe it's I'm doomed, and then really believing that, and then saying, okay, maybe I'm doomed, but I'm stubborn as hell and I'm not giving up. Maybe that's the thought that gets you there. Not this book is brilliant and perfect and it's going to be a bestseller. And if you can believe that, great. Love that for you. But not all of us can do that. We a lot of us need these like little steps to sort of wiggle out. For me, for example, in a parenting sort of setup, because sometimes it's easier to see tools when it's not about your own sort of unique situation. There are some days where I feel like a shitty mom. I'm just not doing a good job at all, and I'm just a failure. And my brain loves to tell me these things. And I can't go when I'm in sort of that mode where I believe that so strongly. I can't then flip a switch and be like, I'm the best mom who ever existed. My brain will just come back with, no, you're not. And then I feel shitty still. I could just say, every parent makes mistakes, but I love this kiddo. And that I can believe. I can believe that I love him. I can believe that all good parents make mistakes. That I can do, and I can make that shift, and then I feel way less bad versus trying to be like, I'm the best mom in the world. You don't feel that if you don't believe it. I know I'm sort of repeating myself, but that is so, so, so key that I really want you to know. This isn't just, believing happy things and everything is going to work out. There are some times where you want to be mad about things and choose thoughts that make you feel mad because sometimes bad shit happens. Sometimes I want to be mad about stuff, and that's also okay. So as we wiggle out of burnout, we are going to be figuring out the thoughts that cause the burnout, and then just one little step better at a time, one thought at a time. Because it's not any one thought that causes burnout. It's why it's so hard to unravel by yourself. It's not just one thing. It is a collection of thoughts and beliefs, things that don't just come from you. These are thoughts and beliefs that are strengthened and reinforced by society, by, the toxic capitalism and toxic shitty patriarchy and white supremacy. All of that stuff is part of what gets in there and sort of creates this thought web that makes burnout so common in our industry. And of course, not just for authors and writers, at all levels of this industry. But the start of the work is becoming aware of the thoughts that contribute to burnout, the ones that we believe so, so strongly that they feel true, that they feel like they're not optional. This can be things like, if I don't meet my deadline, I'll disappoint my editor, or my readers are going to forget about me if I don't write a book a year, or there's always another writer ready to take my place. Finding those thoughts that feel true, that maybe we can argue and prove that they're true, finding those and then recognizing that those thoughts feel like shit and being willing to just be open to believing that they aren't the one and only truth. That work is what allows the changes in behavior, like taking intentional rest, requesting an extension on your deadline without guilt. That stuff can only come after you've shifted that belief. And that shift in belief is my specialty as a coach. So if you loved this episode, if you're feeling intrigued by this model thing, I would love you to join me in my coaching program. Enrollment is now open. It's a 4-month coaching program that begins on May 1st, and I would love to see you there. And if you have questions about it, schedule time to chat with me. I am so happy to answer all of your questions. And next week, we are going to talk about one word that if you eliminate from your vocabulary can change your whole world. And we'll put it in the context of this model so you can see how it works. And until then, my friends, happy writing, happy resting, and I will see you next week.